plenty of cars you can name that feel special, but how many actually feel as if the designers, engineers, and assembly team built the car with you and only you in mind? How about a car where the team that built it is available to you for any question you could ever have about the car? Sure, maybe the new Z06 Corvette isn't the first supercar on your list, but it should be. After all, it is the highest horsepower naturally aspirated V8 ever made! GM thought of everything with the car and how owners would drive it, and it shows. I grew up a GM guy, and trust me, I know how terrible of a product time after time GM can produce. In fact, their wins could probably go on one hand. And this car is a full high-five win! If you're looking for one of the most comprehensive, down-to-earth, self-made, friendly owners of the new Z06 Corvette to learn if this is the car you should start saving for, then you've come to the right place. Chente is chock full of facts, experiences, and generous action. I mean, he let me drive this thing. Come on! Sit back, get in your adult race car beds, and grab a bag of popcorn because this episode is worth watching. Enjoy!
Your controls are down here.
Oh, thank you. Wow.
So, yeah.
And yours are up there.
Yep. Yeah,
Wow.
so it's kind of driver, passenger. Yeah. And that's basically
This is
it,
like
the car.
an airplane
Yeah, it's got
cockpit.
yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, it's like really driver-centric. So, I mean, there's
Yeah.
a PDR, so everything that we do is recorded. So it does record audio in here.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it does record audio, but it like... it's like if I stopped it real quick, it'll you can actually like watch your recordings in here too, which is an SD card that sits within the glove box there. So like, I mean, it goes back pretty. I mean, it goes back pretty far. I think this is like 128 or something.
Why does it do that? Just
it just goes out the front. So I mean, it's just like I don't know. We'll just pull a random one up.
oh,
I'm probably gonna be rapping at some point in here with some music, but like, so it's just like. Just whatever, just driving around and just records. So it's like kind of cool. It's more for, so it's a performance data recorder. So it's really there for, like when you're on the track,
yeah,
and stuff like that. But I have it so it automatically records. It's kind of like a dash cam.
yeah.
And then
I mean,
it also
it is,
tracks
yeah.
like, and I have it set as like a track overview, so it can overlay. So like it'll tell you how hard or how much pressure you had on the brake or the gas pedal and stuff like that. So like when I let people borrow it, I'm like, just don't turn it off, because like
right.
So I'm like, one, if you hit something or somebody hits you, like we have a recording of it. But
Yeah.
the other thing is just more for like, you know, make sure you're not being an idiot. But
You know, it's a little bit of an
Yeah.
accountability.
it's it's 2023
Yep.
Corvette Z06.
Okay.
It is VIN number 2570. They made there was a 70th anniversary of the Corvette.
Okay.
And so they did have a special 70th anniversary version of it, which I did not get. But I think between both of those, there was about 6,100 Z06s made in 23. So very slow start.
Yep.
They started making them in September of 2022.
Okay.
I got mine on June 7th of 23.
Better than the Broncos.
So yeah, so it got to about, they made about 20, at least up to about 2,600 in the first 9 months, because that's when I got mine.
Wow.
So it did take a while to get there, but it's you know, everyone talks about it. It's a 5.5 liter flat plane crank. It's 670 horsepower at 8,400 RPM. It redlines at 86. It is
That's high.
Yeah, 460 pound-feet of torque, and that is at I think the peak is right around like 4,300. So it's kind of, you don't see a lot of the torque until about 3,400 RPM.
Gotcha.
And then it kind of just stays steady
Okay.
the whole time. So because it's flat plane crank, you typically have higher horsepower and lower torque.
Okay.
And the 8,600 RPM is limited due to really vibrations of the engine. Versus,
really?
Yeah.
Versus
anything
like
else.
the peak performance of the engine.
Because the way they do it, there's the flat plane crank. There's never a cylinder fighting for oxygen on the same bank side, like a cross plane crank. So you can rev as much as you want, but what happens is because one side's always going versus the other, it creates vibration.
Gotcha.
Obviously, a little bit different than the Stingray. It's also 3.6 inches wider. A lot of that has to do with the rear end. If you notice, the tires on here are pretty big, so they're 345, 25, 21s in back. It's a staggered setup, so they're 21-inch rims in the back. It is 275, I believe 30, 20 in the front.
And there was two different tire options when you ordered it.
Yeah, so there's 3 trim packages. So there's 1, 2, and 3LZ. This is a 3LZ. The 3LZ gave you a couple extra things. Oh, actually, your door's open, just so you know.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Where do I even...
Button. Yeah, you're good. I just noticed it was warning me.
This thing is crazy, dude. I feel like so tucked in over here.
Yeah. So it's so this is a 3LZ. It adds a few different things. I mean, it's sound system, etc. But this one, big thing is it kind of adds the carbon fiber paddle shifters and steering wheel.
Okay.
It also opens up the option to have the carbon fiber level 2 interior, which is all this fun, overpriced carbon fiber that GM likes to throw in here.
Yeah.
So it definitely is. If you look at some other carbon fiber packages, minus maybe Porsche, it's pretty expensive to get the level 2. But the only way you can do it is if you get the 3LZ package. So it's kind of GM's way of getting a little more Porsche-like in some of their options. This one does have stealth interior, so you kind of have a little more blacked out interior parts.
Gotcha.
As well. Black tips were another option that we chose in this one specifically. I did not get to do the Z07 package. So the Z07 package adds a really high wing. You can get those in carbon fiber, which they look amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Those were on restraint or constraint whenever I ordered this.
Okay.
I didn't want to wait, and I figured I'm not tracking it all the time, and so for me it was kind of overkill.
Yeah.
It takes the downforce from like 700 or from like 380 pound or feet
pounds or whatever, however they measure that,
downforce to about 780. So it's a huge increase to get that package. Adds a lot of drag. I'm not tracking it enough for that to have made sense. That there did come with Cup 2R tires versus this having PS4s.
Okay.
So the PS4s get about 5 times the life out of them than you would on a Cup 2s, and then these are about $800 less a set to replace. So you get 5 times the life, and they're a little cheaper.
Yeah.
Maybe not as much performance if you were to actually be doing a lot of track days, but that maybe 2 or 3 seconds of difference wasn't worth the price for me.
It's that. I mean, especially if you're going to enjoy it and drive it.
Yeah, and I mean, Corvette's kind of always been a working man's sports car.
Yep.
And we're kind of getting to the point now where they're pricing themselves out of that. Right?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
So left here.
Yes. Yeah, these are what the weirdest thing for me is to hear the engine in the back.
Yeah, so they're obviously mid-engine. So the C7 was supposed to be mid-engine.
Oh, yes.
And so the C7 was actually talked about being mid-engine. They just weren't going to make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so they ended up...
want to go straight, so get in this lane if you can.
So once the C7 was not going to be mid-engine, they decided to kind of push it for the C8.
Yep.
They really started working on the mid-engine configuration. I think it was 2015 or 2016 is when they started to really work on it. They actually bought a Ferrari 458 engine off eBay.
No, they didn't.
Yep, they bought a 458 engine off eBay. They said they weren't even sure if it was really going to be a Ferrari 458 engine that showed up. It was, and they did reverse engineer a lot of that engine, which is why they sound so similar if you've ever been around a Ferrari 458. So, one of the first engines they ever made, the first prototype engine they ever made.
When you get a chance.
Yeah, the first prototype engine they ever made, they made a mistake that Ford made.
Gotcha.
When Ford made their flat plane crank engine, they made just kind of traditional oil filter.
I go right here.
And the oil filter shook off and ruined the engine. So when I went to
it vibrated that much?
Yep. So I went to the Corvette Bash in 2022, and I was listening to one of the presentations over it, and they were laughing because these are the engineers of GM, and they were laughing. They said, we looked at Ford and we were like, we would never make that mistake. Well, their first prototype engine, which is a multi-million-dollar engine at this point, with all the research that's gone into it, had a traditional oil filter on it, and it vibrated off and ruined their first multi-million-dollar engine. So the same mistake that Ford made, GM made. So they had a good laugh about it, saying that that they were realizing the uniqueness of vibration and concern that they would have with these engines. So this engine was kind of tested all the way past 9,000 RPM down to the low 8,000 RPMs. They settled at 8,600 RPM. To go farther than that, they had to go less displacement. Okay. But they wanted more displacement to kind of keep some torque in the engine. And so this is kind of the happy medium. Was 8,600 RPM 5.5 liters.
So what's different about the oil filter then?
So it's actually, they ended up going to a plastic oil filter similar to like Porsche's.
Okay.
And then what they do with that is they have a paper cartridge that kind of sits within there. So if you see some of the Porsches, you kind of unscrew it and there's a paper cartridge that kind of comes out of it, a filter. Yeah. And so the same style goes into this.
Just so it doesn't rattle free?
Yep, it just doesn't rattle free. So yeah, this is, so because it's a naturally aspirated, it's 670 horsepower, it's a V8. It is the most powerful naturally aspirated V8 ever produced. So I believe that the Mercedes, I believe it was the AMG Black Series, I think it pushed like 620 or 630 horsepower naturally aspirated. So this is the most likely will be the highest horsepower V8 that's naturally aspirated ever made, knowing that we're going more toward hybrids and getting away from a lot of 8-cylinder cars.
Yep.
So yeah, really cool that they did a great job. You know, when I bought this car, you know, they always call you about your extended warranty. I added it. This is a first year model.
Yeah, that's true.
First time they've ever done a flat plane crank. So this one, you know, I did get a little extended warranty on it just in case.
Just kind of like the R&D's.
Yeah, I mean,
GM has never been known to like perfect anything on the first try.
Yeah,
or really the second try. I'm a big GM guy, but they really screw things up a lot.
Very true. So the unique thing in this is that they built this engine alongside their race team.
Okay.
And so this same engine that's used in here is used in their C8.R race team now.
Gotcha.
The big difference is there's obviously some differences in them. The big thing is that they have to have a restrictor plate on race engines, so they're limited, you know, to a certain air inlet.
Yep.
Whereas on the consumer, my vehicle, they didn't have that. So these are actually more horsepower than the race engines.
Really?
But yeah, so they were driven in the race cars for quite a while. I mean, a lot of testing.
Okay.
They did. I'd have to look at exactly what it is. I have a slide of it, so I'll send it to you, and you can include it if you like.
Yeah.
But there's a slide over some of their testing, and I believe they did. It was about 24 hours of race time, and just swapping, you know, rotors and brake pads as needed.
Wow.
They did about 24-hour testing a few times to kind of get long-term data. If you remember back a while, their C7 Z06 had an issue with overheating. The first years, and so they wanted to avoid that this time. So they did a lot of extra testing. This is a dry sump system. It has the most vacuum I've ever had in part of a dry sump system. It keeps a very specific amount of oil in the engine and keeps quite a bit of it in the tank. I know that Savage Geese and them on their YouTube page did a track day and noticed that oil temps never got above 220.
Wow.
On a full going out, track day. So a lot better cooling, no issues compared to what they've had. You know, a lot of people have been tracking these and taking them out. You haven't really seen an issue with them yet.
Have you tracked it at all since you bought it?
I have not tracked it. No. No trips to Mexico yet. I want to.
You do want to?
I want to do autocross. So as you know, people watching, I had a baby very shortly after getting this car, about 2 weeks after. And so, I've only had it for about 6 months, have about 4,200 miles on it. So I've driven it as much as I can, which includes all the grocery visits. And, my wife, if she wants a coffee, I gladly go get her a coffee.
You take it for everything,
Oh, she's the best. She let me get it. It's yellow because of her.
It is?
Yeah, it's yellow because of her.
I love this color.
Appreciate it.
I love the color.
Yeah, so it's between this and Rapid Blue, which there's actually somebody in town that owns a Rapid Blue.
Is that Smurfette on Instagram?
No, it's not Smurfette. So this, I think he goes by Z06.
Okay.
Okay. But he's been at a couple of the shows here and kind of local to the area. But it was between the Rapid Blue and the Accelerate Yellow. My wife saw an Accelerate Yellow one in Boise on a regular Stingray, and she was like, I don't need to see the blue one. That's the color I want.
Well, as always, women are usually right.
Since she let me buy it, she could choose the color. So
smart man.
Yeah, her non-negotiables were yellow, and she wanted the stitching and the seat belts to match.
Oh, okay. So this is like you ordered it like this. They don't just automatically do this.
Yep, and there's also
I love that.
Yep, there's also red stitching. So those are the only two options, and they do have to come on black interior. There is a special blue interior that does have blue stitching, but it only comes in two-tone blue interior. I think it's the best interior they make. Just didn't go well with the yellow car.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't have gone.
Yep. No. So we plan on autocrossing it. We plan on taking it to the Utah Motorsports campus a few times a year.
Cool.
So you get out there and track it.
Yeah.
And so we'll try to get into that a little bit more next year. Didn't get to do it this year. but did have carbon ceramics on this. So I also don't want to track it a ton because I don't want to replace them.
Right.
If ever it comes to that point, I'll probably just go to steel. But they're nice. Carbon ceramics have massive rotors, so they're about 15.7 inches.
That's the first thing I noticed when you pulled up. I was like, wow, those rotors are huge.
And these are bright yellow, so they're kind of easy to see. This does actually, while we're right here, this does have a front lift option as well.
No
so
way.
There's a button here that allows you to lift it about 2 inches. If you go over 27 miles an hour, it lowers automatically, or you can just press the button again, it lowers. It also saves location. So like as I pull up to my house, it has the location saved. So as I start to slow down, pulling up to my house, it automatically raises. And it keeps about 1,000 locations if you want. So I don't know who would ever max it out. But it's like nice for the front end. Again, at the time, I had no option for Z07 or any ground effects, front split or anything when I ordered mine. But if you do have a front splitter, they're a little bit lower, stick out a little more to the front. And so that's just a really nice option to have. Some people just don't get it, and they're totally fine without it. Adds a little extra weight. These are about right under 3,700 pounds. So they're still kind of decently heavy for a two-person sports car. But
I was so worried about today, like where we were going to film, because I didn't want you to hit anything with it.
Oh, no, not at all. So I'm kind of cheating, and like so right now, because I haven't gone over 27 miles an hour or haven't pressed the button, it'll continue to leave it raised. So all these bumps that we're hitting here,
I've shot over these before.
and these are perfectly fine. Yeah, they can be pretty fine. But as you like, so we'll speed up, and I know there's another one, but we speed up, the vehicle will automatically start to lower. These bumps aren't that bad, so honestly, we probably wouldn't even need it. But it is probably take like maybe 1, 2, maybe 3.5 seconds to get up and down.
The little thing blinks until it's
blinks to let you know. Yep. And then, like I said, as you start driving, it'll kind of give you a bunch of different drive modes. There's an active valve in the exhaust system, so I know you got to hear it earlier, and people on the video will be able to hear it from your mics. It's completely stock exhaust. It sounds phenomenal for stock. I personally believe, besides a few cars in LFAs and stuff of the world, this is probably one of the best sounding stock cars that there is.
I was surprised. I wasn't surprised by how loud it was, if it was stock or not. I was just surprised, like you said, how good it sounded. That's a stock exhaust.
Absolutely. So I mean, it has so this car with the Cup 2Rs is rated at, like, I think Car and Driver did it at 2.5 seconds, 0 to 60. They have a 10.5 second quarter mile. I know that I believe Jesse Wuji, I think is how you say his name. He just put skinnies on the front, everything else completely stock, and I think he ran like I think it was 10.2 quarter mile
in a stock car.
So they're pretty fast. The Z06s, non-Z07 models tend to do a little bit better in the quarter mile. And then obviously a Z07 will do quite a bit better on the track than a non-Z07 car. Car and Driver did do a lightning lap with it, and it did end up beating. It's the fastest naturally aspirated car they've ever tested on the lightning lap. It did beat like a GT3 RS, beat a couple of the Porsche rivals. The only cars that have beat it, that Car and Driver has tested, were all cars that had some sort of boost in them, and it was quite a bit more expensive. So I think the closest car was like a $330,000 McLaren. So as far as paying for the buck goes, you can get these down to I think about 112ish MSRP. And obviously this one was closer to about the 147 mark, just because of some of the extra goodies we added.
You wanted,
but if you want to keep
go this way,
if you want to keep
go that way.
Yep. If you want to keep costs down, I mean, you could get a 1LZ base model with Z07 package, and probably keep that somewhere. I believe the Z07 package is like a $12,000 option or so.
I gotta give you a thumbs up.
And so, I mean, you could probably be in the low 120s and get a car that's going to beat, a lot of cars with quite a bit of
a $330,000 car.
Yeah, so it's a great car. I think it's a great bang for your buck. Again, kind of going back to the working man's, sports car. I think GM's finally starting to price themselves out of that. The base Stingrays, they're great cars. They're amazing, and I think that's probably the only one you can argue is truly kind of that working man's, Corvette. I think that these, once these are in 6 digits. I'm starting out. There's a lot of markup still on them. I got lucky to get this one at out of Sioka Corvette in New Jersey at MSRP. So very thankful for them.
That's very lucky.
Yeah, and so they were the largest Corvette dealer at the time. I think they're second now to McMulkin, but both of those dealerships are MSRP dealers. They get the most Corvettes out of anybody in the country.
Good for them for keeping it like that.
Getting on their list was hard, so I put a deposit down in November of 2021. We received it in June of 23, so almost 2 years. But yeah, very lucky that I got the opportunity to get one at MSRP. But they're still, these you're going to see these typically have a $20,000 to $50,000 markup, even today's market.
Yeah.
And so I think they're kind of priced themselves out of that, working man's sports car.
Well, I think that market's going away for a company like GM. If you think of our generation and this next generation, the working man sports car is going to be something foreign, either Japanese or German, that a lot of kids or younger people like us gravitate towards. Yep. We can call ourselves young still.
My body doesn't feel like it.
No, but like, if you think of we're in our 30s, but you think of people in their 20s or people our age, BMWs, Honda, Toyota, like Nissan, those have really, I think, hit that $40,000 to $80,000 market, or they're just going towards the used market for cars that were 100 or 150 at one point. Whereas like the whole generation that bought Corvettes are the stereotypical, like that working man group that bought those working man ones are dying. Like with
their jean shorts and New Balances.
Yes,
I did wear New Balances today, but they're my black ones.
I wore Adidas today. My New Balances were too dirty. Yeah. But it's like, at least that's how I view it. That could be completely unfounded, right? But so these cars, I think you get that. They probably realize they're going to get that enthusiast group because those people are still sitting on plenty of cash, especially after the pandemic. Yep. And now you've got like a whole different group of people, like people that have worked hard or have money or don't have money or whatever, that just like want that $300,000 car feel and are willing to pay for it to a certain extent, like you, where it's like just such a cool car.
Yeah, interior's gotten a lot better.
Oh my God, this is like phenomenal.
You're not getting a lot of noises if you're pushing or any of that stuff. I mean, they really kind of upped it.
I was like really pushing around, and it's like really solid.
Yeah, everything's pretty solid. Yeah. I mean, it's maybe not, some cars, all your luxury cars are going to push $250,000, $300,000. Sometimes, McLarens, you get into a McLaren sometimes and you get a couple little things you got to, I love McLarens, but you get inside their interior, you get a little creaky and things start to loosen up a little bit. And, you even get in like the plaids, right? A Tesla, and you get into a plaid, and, you've seen so many horror stories of the interiors on those and things of that sort. And I think it's kind of hard, but, for the most part, I think this is great. I think they're put together really well.
What are some of the quirks you've noticed about it? Like, McLaren has those quirks, like anything you've noticed where it's like, oh, they kind of could have done this better, or have you found anything
if you look at all the, we got the custom yellow stitching, it's nice at first glance. If you really paid attention to it, there's a certain couple places that maybe it goes up. It goes a little different. And there's, some of the panels don't line up specifically like 100% well. But for the most part, nothing that, you look at and you're gonna really like. If you own it, like I do, I notice it. Right. Another thing that like if anybody ever notices this, they're gonna be like, what? They're gonna notice it now going forward, is the carbon ceramic rotors, or the calipers are painted. They're yellow. They're a different yellow than the car is, and you probably didn't notice it.
I didn't.
When you looked at them. And left here?
Yeah, go right. Yeah.
So you probably didn't notice it, but
I didn't.
They're a different yellow, and the seat belts are different yellow than those two yellow.
What?
And so once you start to notice that stuff, I mean, it's noticeable. But
wow. That thing just...
Yeah, and it sticks pretty good. I mean, we'll...
that wasn't scary. Like, that wasn't like...
Very controlled. There's a lot of safety in the car. I don't, I drive typically with a lot of the traction, stability, everything kind of on.
You do? Okay.
Yeah, I tend to... unless we're in Mexico. But, here we do, just because when it's kind of a colder day today. But, the car is very... I mean, if you had never driven a car before and you decided that you wanted to just really... rip this thing, you can do it pretty safely. There's just so much. I'll pull up the Z mode right here real quick, and you'll notice that these are a bunch of different things you can do. So you can adjust steering, suspension, engine shift, the brake feel, obviously engine sound, and then this is your performance traction management. So there's there's 5 or 6 settings of how much you want the traction to be involved.
That is so complex, the way they did that.
And so there's a few different modes. So you have your sport mode, your touring mode, your weather mode. You all kind of have, your touring mode's going to have maybe a quieter exhaust, softer suspension feel. It's magnetic ride.
Okay.
And so then you go to your weather mode. Every safety feature is on, and every performance thing is turned all the way down. So if you're driving this thing in the rain or something, you're not worrying too much about it. Then you have like your track modes. Your track modes is going to have everything. Your brake feel as hard as it can be. Your shift points are going to hold as long as they can. And you'll see there is a heads-up display on this. Many GM products have today. It changes with the modes that you're in, and then also the front dash here, or your front display does change as well, depending on what.
How long did it take you to just get through all of that? Like,
I think the hardest thing out of all of it is to get used to the heads-up display, because your natural thing is to look down.
Yeah.
So I think I wish I used that more.
Yeah.
I don't.
Just out of habit.
Yeah. I think that you have especially when you first get it, you spend a good half an hour kind of going through all the settings.
Yeah.
Then you drive it a few times and you're like, oh, I'm going to tweak this, or I want it to look this way whenever I'm in this mode.
When you went to pick it up, because I went to the
Corvette Museum.
You went to the Corvette Museum, picked it up. Did they have somebody there that was like, here's to go over everything?
Yep. There's someone there that walks you through. So you do a tour of the plant. I skipped the tour of the plant because we were on a bit of a time restriction. My wife was about to have a baby, so I couldn't be there very long. I literally went there and flew out. Went there, picked it up, drove it to my buddy's house, and I flew out. But there's a plant tour they typically do, and then there's someone that sits there with you and walks through every part of the vehicle. So whatever you want to know, how the trunk works. There's a Frunk. There's a Frunk Trunk. Doesn't fit very much. It does fit a couple. I'll tell you this. I'm an Albertsons guy, and I love getting lunch at Albertsons, and it perfectly fits my lunch from Albertsons kind of in the front there.
Can you fit like a carry-on suitcase in there, you think?
Yeah, and then there's also companies that do specifically sell specific luggage that fits these compartments.
Seriously?
Perfect. Yeah. They do charge you for it. I think the front ones are like $300 and some for a luggage, little things that fit in there.
Yeah.
The front, I would say, it's not super huge. I'll give you the details around kind of the cubic feet if people are really interested. The back, the reason the car weighs a little more is they extended the back of it to make sure they could still fit golf bags. So the trunk of it still has enough room, because that's kind of been the thing with Corvettes, right?
God.
You can take your Corvette to go golfing on Sunday.
Yeah.
And so they do have enough room. You could fit 2 golf bags. We've tested it. Both my wife and I's golf bags do fit back there.
That is hilarious that they actually thought of that.
Yeah, and so the front, I would say, you can put kind of maybe a weekender bag.
Right.
2 weekender bags.
If you wanted to go to the Oregon coast or something, you could probably.
Yeah, absolutely. But there's enough room in the trunk to really keep it.
Yeah.
Enough stuff. You're going to be fine.
Right.
I go grocery shopping in it all the time, because it's one of my excuses to drive it.
That's awesome. I always wonder about that. When I do finally get a fun car to rip around, I'm like, am I just going to want to drive this thing everywhere I go?
Absolutely.
Which I'm fine with. I'm going to use it. This is not the budget man's Corvette. This is the real deal.
So it's definitely. It can be pretty intense. It's fun.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's again, a lot of this stuff turned on. It's a very safe car. It grips. It grips really well. It grips really well. It does turn quite a bit of heads.
It's amazing.
A few people get confused. They think it's a Ferrari a lot of times. Some people have asked me, is it a Ferrari?
Have they really?
Yeah, so I took the front badge off because I got it PPF'd.
Okay.
I got it here done locally at Creative Wraps, who's done phenomenal jobs with my car. But I took the badge off because I don't want them to cut around it.
Right.
And I have other badges. I just haven't put them on top of the PPF.
The wrap.
And so people that don't see the front, they're like, hey, what is that, a Ferrari? I'm like, no, it's a Corvette, I wish it was an SF90 or something, right? No, so that's kind of also one of the things. But I think it's just it's fun. I think
it's
it's
fun. You can go this way if you want towards Broadway. I think what surprises me about it is it's got so much power, and I don't even know what to say. It's got so much power, but it's so refined.
Yeah.
And it's it's like it's kind of like you're headed to Mars on just this crazy rocket ship, or you know what it is? You're in an F-16 or an F-18, and the pilot's like, you're with the pilot's like, I got it, don't worry. And you're just sitting there along for the ride, and this thing just knows what to do.
Yeah.
And that doesn't feel, there's cars like Nathan's Viper where I just scared. Like, it's not nearly as quick as this, but I was scared in that car. And you ripping it like that, I'm not scared. I just trust the car.
Yeah, I always tell people it's probably the most, as far as cars, I've been in, GTRs, and I've been in a couple 911s and a few things of that sort. I think, to me, I believe this car does fast very comfortably.
Yes.
You can be driving, having a great time touring on the road. You don't have a ton of road noise. The engine sounds great. You can pass somebody. You can hit Mexico roads and really get on it, and then you can get back into like having a nice sound system in a pretty reasonable car. And so I think it's a great car for someone maybe that, like for me, getting into like your first, I wouldn't say exotic, because I think there's too many made to ever consider this an exotic car, but I would say for someone to be in a supercar, I think it's a great first supercar. Even the Stingray, I think the Stingray is plenty powerful enough that I think it truly gives you great. I mean,
the intro feel to it.
Yeah, awesome. The Z06, if you're going to track it, I think this is the car you do. I think tracking this car is definitely going to be a blast. I've seen people do it. I haven't done it yet. Well, when we go next year, we'll bring you out for one of them.
I would love to.
We'll do an autocross day or something.
Yeah.
Have a bunch of fun.
Shots of you doing that. And
we'll get the whole crew, your whole lineup. We'll get Derek and Kamani and me. You'll have an S2000 at this point.
Yep.
We'll just bring your lineup. We'll go do an autocross day.
That'd be awesome. That'd be a ton of fun.
But I just think it's great. I think maybe it's a little bit of overkill for just like daily driving.
Sure, definitely definitely an overkill for that. But I think you would know that if you're buying this.
Yeah,
car.
absolutely.
Like know it's not going to be an everyday vehicle. Even if you drive it every day, you're understanding like it's not going to have those comforts.
Yep, exactly. And I think the real thing is, so the real debate I believe is like, okay, do you get this versus maybe something used, a used R8, or potentially like even a 458, right? A Ferrari 458. For me, I think this was worth it simply just because of the fact that it was new, a little more creature comforts that I like to have in a car.
You got to order what you wanted too.
Exactly how I wanted it. Not having to worry about warranty or a vehicle being out of warranty.
And where to get it fixed if it's like, a lot
especially here in Idaho.
Yes, that is something you have to consider.
Yep, absolutely. So, and this is serviced just at a regular GM. It makes you a little nervous.
But they have like a specialty tech?
So they do have I think it's a son and a father here in Boise that at the Chevrolet here that does have like specialized in Corvette. They have done most of the Z06s in the area, so I trusted them.
Yes.
But
that would make me nervous.
Yeah, most of them will always be done by me, oil changes and stuff. There's the first one you get covered by GM. So I took my free oil change and things of that sort. But it's a great car. There is a break-in period. So the first 500 miles, you're not limited to your rev, but it does visually limit your red line. So if you drive it in auto mode and you're not flooring it, it'll always be mindful of that.
Right.
And then you don't want to launch it or anything, because we do have launch control in this. You don't want to launch it or anything until 1,500, or track day until 1,500 miles, and that's for transmission break-in.
Okay.
So about a total of 1,500 mile break-in is really what it is. 500 for the engine. They still don't want you flooring it over and over and over again after your 500 miles. Yeah. But there is that 1,500. So I was very strict. I kept to my, I wasn't flooring it or doing anything crazy. I stayed under my, I think it was 6,000 RPM red line for the first 500 miles, and then I still took it pretty easy for the next 1,000 until I got to 1,500. And then, we definitely had a little fun in it, did a couple launches. Yeah. I actually have a draggy in here, and I forgot to charge it, so we had a draggy if we wanted to go do some testing in it, but my draggy's dead at the moment.
That's all right.
But yeah, it turns heads. I think it's a lot of fun. I think kids love it. We've done, kind of the car shows here. We like, we did the mall one. We did a couple of them. I love letting kids sit in it. I've let a few people even take it for a day and enjoy it.
I was shocked when you said that.
Yeah.
I figured, like, I've seen people, I know some of the people you've let take it, and I've seen them post that, that they've got it or whatever. And I just figured you were like
with them.
Probably
a little more trusting than I should be. No, but obviously I was very picky with who did take my car. And people that I trust and have passion for cars and understand what they're capable of.
Yes.
And but yeah, we love taking. I've taken kids for drives with their parents' permissions. I've taken parents for drives in it. We've
that's awesome.
We let people sit in it. It's a car. It's going to get dinged. It's going to probably get a couple of scratches. And things are going to happen to it. I love that I get to enjoy it with people. The reason I'm into cars is because people had cool vehicles around me and let me enjoy them.
Yes.
And my goal is to kind of reciprocate that with kind of the younger generation.
All right, am I going to drive this thing?
Yeah, let's do it.
Oh my god. This feels like an everyday car when you're just like babying it.
Yeah. So it is a dual clutch. It's a dual clutch. It's a 8-speed Tremec. So you will notice sometimes at your lower speeds, if you're kind of in between what you're doing, you'll feel it kind of. You'll feel the shift for sure. Kind of deciding where it wants to be at. The shifts are really fast. If you go into manual mode,
I'm gonna put it in there.
They're fast for sure. So I mean, your up and down shifts. I wouldn't say it's PDK level, but I would say it's not far behind. It's pretty impressive, especially always joking around about it being a GM product.
Yeah.
Right. They've improved so much. I'm a big Corvette fan. Always have been. I love C6 Corvettes. I think C6 Corvettes are kind of a special place to me. Like I love their
Where
design.
do you think did that just happen from you seeing them and loving them?
Yeah,
or did
I think I loved them. I've seen them when I was in Texas. We used to see them at some car shows. There was a couple people there that had just some blacked out C6 Z06s. I think they look so cool. C7s are great. The ZR1s, 755 horsepower. But I've been in one. Someone's driven me in one. They felt scary to me.
Yeah.
They felt like they could be out of control.
Yeah.
And so I feel like the C6 has never felt like that when I've been in one or ridden one. And then obviously you get in this, you don't feel at all like you're kind of in danger of losing it or anything. So, but I was looking at getting a Cayman GT4.
Yep.
I already had an appointment to go put my deposit down, build my car, wait the 18 to 24 months for it to come. And we got to the point where this got announced officially because it was delayed. When it officially got announced, seeing that it just had more horsepower, that it had, what did way more, but it had kind of a little more practicality to it. You can pull both paddle shifts, by the way.
Oh, I can.
Pull paddle shifts, it puts it in neutral if you hold them in, and then you can give it a...
Just like that?
Just hold them both in. So that's pretty fun.
That is fun.
Yeah, the old Porsche trick.
Yeah.
But this thing, it just had a little more practicality to it, more space. It was more horsepower. It was faster. And I thought, this would be a little bit more money the way that I wanted to build it. I just thought, I'm going to give it a go.
Yeah.
So I'm happy I did. I have no regrets about not getting a Cayman. I still love them. Like I told you off camera, I still would prefer a GT4 RS over this just because of the rawness of it.
Raw. I love using raw to describe things. If we need to work in raw 6 more times, and then we'll go have Kamani go on a hunt to find him because I think he made fun of me for using that with Nathan's car. We love how raw GT4 is.
But yes, here you go. There's a Stingray. But you can really tell a difference once you see a Stingray and you see a Z06 next to it. In person, you can really tell the difference. If you're just looking at pictures, you're like, oh, there's maybe not that much of a difference. But I feel like seeing them in person, even from the exterior, you can kind of really tell.
Yeah, you can
the difference in them. But yeah, I still love Porsches. Still think the Cayman's awesome. This was just a better fit for me in my situation.
What's the GT4 go for?
GT4, the one I had built out was right about $125,000. So this was probably, right about $20,000 more.
Yeah.
For me, the extra, I could have got them similar pricing. And you could have got the GT4 way above the amount that I had it at once you start ticking the boxes, right, and checking the boxes there. So this to me was, what I wanted, within a reasonable price that I was comfortable with. I could, you could have bumped this up a little more. You go to a convertible, you add Z07. I mean, people did push these into the 170s, and they did put these in the 170s. I think at that point, they're getting close to used Ferrari, Lamborghini, R8 prices, where maybe it doesn't make as much sense. And then the markup, when they first came out, people paying $50,000 to $100,000 over. To me, that I don't think that was worth it.
No.
Owning it, I would tell you, I don't think it was worth it to pay that much over.
I just don't. I also just have a tough time, and as I've learned, you're a very budget conscious person. I just have a tough time saying some brand new this car sells for this. It's driven off the lot, and now you're gonna charge me $50,000 more.
Yeah.
Or you're gonna sell it to me $50,000 more, like on Cars and Bids or Bring a Truck.
Yep.
That's just like with the Hummer EV1s that went like that.
Yep,
insane.
absolutely. Now GM did do their best to limit it. It was you can only do so much. You can't take allocations from dealerships. You can't do those sort of things, right?
Right.
But they tried to. They gave you 5,000 GM dollars. You could use towards service, parts, accessories.
If you didn't sell it for how long?
If you didn't sell it for 6 months.
6 months.
And then if you do sell it within the first 6 months, it did void the warranty.
God, this thing is just. I really wanted to. I got to see like what it does at a higher speed. You get on the highway.
Yeah.
I really wanted to just see on this road like.
Yeah.
Kind of a little bit of a tighter drive, slower speed, but just cornering wise.
So it did. I believe that they're 1.28 G's is what it's capable of pulling on Cup 2Rs and the Z07 package. So that's definitely, crazy. I mean, definitely pretty good in the old skid pad there.
That's a lot. Like nothing. I mean, I'm not pushing it.
Yeah, I've probably done I think 0.9 something, and I feel like that was a hard turn. And I was like, man, it has more in it, which is pretty crazy.
That is out of control. I've put the front end up, and now I'm over the bump. Now I'll put the front end down. Thank you, car.
Yep. Yeah, front lift is definitely a nice thing to have. Some people don't want them just simply because of the weight they add.
Gotcha.
I don't know how much it adds, but for me, it's more of a convenience.
Well, as much as you're going to drive it too, like I can understand, like you were saying, people track these cars religiously, or exclusively. Like if I was just tracking a car, and I had 140K to burn or whatever, and I wanted this thing as light as possible, and it's never going to see like a street, why not?
Yep, absolutely.
This neighborhood's going to love me. I'll sign wherever I need to sign to agree to pay any disturbance tickets.
Wish we could use it more for what it's designed for.
Right.
But being a new dad and having some new priorities in life, I don't get to take this out or do some of those things as often as I'd like. But I also love being a dad, and I would, I'm okay with losing some of the track days.
Yeah, but your kid's gonna love like being able to hang out and. Yeah,
she did go to did a Cars and Coffee here with Trace.
Yep. And
that was her. She got to go, and that was her first car show. So she went at a pretty young age, and I think she was probably 2 months when we went. And so she got to have her first car show. And shout out to Kamani. Took a picture of us at that car show. So Kamani took a nice little picture of us at our first car show with the baby. But yeah, I plan on keeping this for a while. The only reason I think I would sell it is if I can get a low allocation at MSRP for a ZR1.
Really?
So,
okay.
There's a lot of stipulations. Nobody knows at this time. No matter what you share, someone's going to disagree with you. They expect that it's going to most likely be a twin turbo version of this engine. Probably push 800 plus horsepower. I would love to. I would love to have one of those. I think it's the only way that I would probably sell this in the near future. Just because I truly am enjoying the ownership of it. I had a few people offer me, when I got low on an MSRP list, I had people offering me, messaging me on Facebook and different groups asking me for my spot in line. offering me
you were saying that.
$30,000. And so, Sioka, what I went through, doesn't allow you, one, to sell your allocations. But some people find workarounds. So they say, hey, you take delivery of the car under your name. Then we have an agreement where you transfer it over. And so those people reaching out. I got the car. Some people bought them and flipped them. I have no issues that people flipped them. People bought them and flipped them for more money. I mean, I don't like it, but at the end of the day, it's
just a reality, unfortunately.
Yeah. And part of the reason we live where we live is because we have the freedoms to do certain things. Right. And if you wanted to flip them, that's fine. I wanted to enjoy it, so I kept mine and plan to keep it for a while.
God, no torque dip.
Yeah, once you get into it, you kind of just have it.
Yeah.
Again, once you stay above like 3,400 RPM, you'll kind of always feel that torque there.
Yeah.
It's just super nice. It doesn't, grow in torque like some cars do, but it just kind of maintains
it
that.
Just does. You're right. It does. It just it's very steady. This is going to be a little wet up here. I'll be
little different than like a Porsche where as you're like in a Porsche, that turbo spool just continues to give you power. Yep. So you don't feel that high end like you would maybe in something like a 911 Turbo S. But I think this just has great linear, naturally aspirated power that may not be the fastest thing on the road, but it puts a smile on your face.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to set any records. Like even when I go to track day, I don't mind if I weigh a little more and I'm a little slower than the base model Z07.
Yeah,
because I'm not there to set any track records. Yeah. I'm there to just have fun.
Exactly.
I gotta give a shout out to I learned so much about this car.
You're like just a wealth of knowledge about this thing.
I learned a lot about it because of a mid-engine Corvette forum. So there's a couple people out there. A guy named John runs it. John Elegant. How cool of a last name is that? Elegant.
That's very
John
good.
Elegant. They run this mid-engine Corvette forum, and it taught me a lot. When I was making my decision between a Cayman and getting one of these, they kind of helped me a ton. So that's like where I learned a lot of my information. It's also where I kept track of like where they were at with number of vehicles they made. Like people that had insights. John speaks with all the GM engineers. And that was one thing I will say is cool too. So John, there's a couple people there that were just super helpful to me. There was like John, Rick, and a bunch of, Brad and a bunch of these people in that group. I actually met the other guy that has a Z07 in town through that group.
That's awesome.
We had our location set and realized, hey, we're in the same area. So we got to meet up once he got his. But, the GM engineers, I emailed a couple of them with questions and they respond back to you, which I think is very unique.
Seriously?
Yeah, I think is very unique. So Josh Holder and a couple of those people, if you had a question, you could reach out and you'll actually hear back from them. They show up to the bash. So I went to the Corvette bash, which is usually in April. They all show up and you can just sit there and talk to them. So I'm asking them things and they're just answering my questions or telling me, hey, here's kind of a certain thing, or here's why we didn't do more RPM. Yeah. Here's why we didn't hit 9,000 just to say we had a 9,000 RPM red line. And so, really cool. Awesome. So I think that's unique as well. I think they kind of self-claim themselves as the most reachable engineering group in the world.
Well, what a great way to build community, with these cars too. To be so reachable. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome. So if we had questions, so usually the group, in that forum, we would all chat, and John would kind of take the most common questions and would shoot them over. Yeah. And within a couple hours, he would have some answers for us. And this is before the car was fully released. So this is hey, we had questions about, the carbon ceramic brakes. We had questions about certain clearances. There was people that were like, hey, what's the exact measurement of the width of the back of the car for trailer purposes? Yeah. And they I was at the bash when somebody asked that, and they went out there with a ruler and just kind of measured it live to be this is exactly how much it is, how much space you need to get this into a trailer between two fenders. So great. I will say that about GM, that they've been phenomenal. You can reach out to them, they responded back, and then that forum was just great for me to understand a lot of these things. The reason I know a lot about the car is because of that group, but it's also because those things mattered to me. Yeah, I wanted to know, certain things.
It shows how invested they are, though, in what they created. Yeah, too. That
absolutely.
The fact that they're that willing to be open or just answer questions from anybody. Never mind all customers or a bunch of customers after the fact. Just shows how much they cared about and how confident they are in what they created. Yep. Because if they weren't, you'd be able to tell right away just talking to them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I know that and I'd have to find out exactly which makers they were, but after they built the engine too, they actually got a couple of letters of congratulations on their engine. So
that's cool.
I believe they got one from Porsche. I'll double check this, but Ferrari and Porsche congratulating them on what they built, just because
that's
it is
cool. Yeah.
really unique. And to have, you know, a GM or a Ford or a, you know, Dodge, somebody to put something like this together was probably something we would never have thought of, you know, a few years ago.
No.
A mid-engine car, that supercar that truly, you know, can beat sometimes of some of the cars that have set the standard, like the GT3s, you know, a Cayman, those kind of cars. So, yeah, I've enjoyed every bit of it. I'm glad you're getting to experience it. Oh, there's a Panamera.
Yeah. I'm
a sucker for Panameras.
I like those cars.
I'm a sucker for. I like wagons.
I do too.
Sorry.
My friend Jay, who will be excited, that just loves Volvos, like just obsessed with Volvos, and even his best man at his wedding was like, I've never met anybody that could convince me a Volvo was a cool car until I met Jay, and he was just obsessed with the wagons from Volvo. And
I was about to say I like wagons.
Yes, and so he was obsessed with those, and so that was like my first intro into wagons, and just all the different ones that are just awesome that are out there. But
so what's your, I gotta ask you a question then, what's your, currently, as of today, what's your dream line of a car? Let's say you had to have a sports car, kind of like a sedan, an SUV. You gotta have one of those.
But an SUV, I'm gonna start with the SUV because that's the easiest. I'd go for the new Escalade.
Yeah.
And I'd go for the V.
The V? Okay.
I'd go for the V. That would be my SUV. And then for a sports car, I'd probably go. I'd go for an R34 Skyline.
Oh yeah.
Because it's just like I think there's maybe been one in Boise too that anyone's ever seen, and I think just how rare they are to see. I just always love being in a car that
you could be the first of many in Idaho. We have a great car scene.
Yes. Yeah. No, I know. Well, that's great. We're building it.
Shout out to people like Trace and Chris and all these guys that are helping us build it. But
it's awesome. Even the guys at some of the shops that I go, like BK Industries does my my work on my 4Runner, and they're like, dude, 5-6 years ago or 10 years ago, there was nothing here.
Yeah.
And now there is. And so I think I'd go R34 Skyline, and sedan I'd probably go Audi, like S5 or S7 or even like that Cayman we saw. I think those would probably be my three. But my goal right now is to go S2000, 911, and then I'd love something like newer or new that is just kind of more practical, like a Type R, like a Civic Type R, or the new Nissan Z. I just like those a lot too.
Yeah. I have one of my best friends works for Nissan.
Okay.
And so he's out in the Tennessee area where their headquarters is at.
Cool.
So he got to take one. You got to take one home because they like them to test things out. So he got to take one of the new Z's home. Sent me some cool pictures, and he spoke pretty highly of it.
Yeah, I think they look pretty cool. I haven't had a chance to like drive one or really like spend any time in one yet.
Yeah.
Viper
you
would
get
be
to
up
that
there
price,
too.
you're sitting at the point where you're like, is this, do I get this or do I get a Supra? Right. Supras, you kind of in that little area. Yeah, I think there's just so many cool cars, today.
I think
cars are starting to they're getting expensive now.
Yes.
Right? And that's kind of the thing. But, I'll say this to anybody that doesn't have one yet or is working toward it, set your goals.
Yep.
Sacrifice a couple little things to make sure you can get there.
And don't overreach.
I joke around sometimes. Yeah, I'm like, eat some ramen at the end of the month. Make sure you're hitting your goals.
Yeah.
Create yourself a way to, however you find a way to save some money, whether that's creating a budget or using the apps that there are.
Yep.
Do something to be able to put a little bit of money
and
away.
Talk to people about the car. Like I'm dying to have an S2000, and I will have one. And
you've got a couple interviews in them.
Yes, I've got interviews in them, and
AP1, AP2. You kind of done both of them.
I haven't done an AP2 yet, but I've talked to people that have them, or have talked enough to other people that own S2000s, have driven both, to like why they chose an AP1 over an AP2 or vice versa. And I think for me, like the thing I always was curious about, and with any car I buy, is like, where do I want to be in the market? Like, do I want the one with 25,000 miles and I'm paying top dollar? Or do I want the one that's, in the middle? Or do I want like just pay rock bottom and know I'm going to have problems with it? and that's like been a really big thing for me that I've talked to with a lot of people, is like, where do I want to be?
Yeah. That's great advice. Yeah. Reach out to people that have it.
Right.
Talk with them about it. And then yeah, and I think the biggest thing people do when they're young, and I'm grateful that I didn't do this, was overstep what I was capable of doing at the time.
Yep.
And so I'll tell you this, if you're a little patient, you typically will get something a little nicer because you waited.
Yep.
And
the deals are out there. You just got to be patient.
They're great. You find the right people. A couple years ago, I was thinking about getting something, and I waited just to take care of some personal things, and wanted to create a family. So I was like, I need to be at a financial, state. I need to be at a certain financial state in my mind to be able to feel good about having a family and being able to provide some stability.
Yeah.
And by waiting, this opportunity came up, and so I've enjoyed it. But yeah, it's good. Have goals. Go set goals.
That'll never get old. Ooh, that's a big one. I'm gonna go for it just to be safe.
Yeah, you're good. Okay. But yeah, and go shoot for them. We need some nice cars here, especially in Idaho. Let's make that car scene nice. And,
I need more episodes.
Yeah. This has been fun.
I hope you had fun.
We obviously missed a couple days. It was like playing phone tag in real life.
I know. And I finally got you in a good spot where you were with like your kid and timing and weather, and then I had to cancel. I was like, God damn.
And then we were supposed to do this yesterday.
Yep.
And then yesterday was a very foggy day.
Yes.
Just not a good day for anybody to enjoy the car.
This was a great day.
So yeah, a little flexible. Moved it to today. By the time this comes out, my family will now know. But we got another baby on the way.
Yeah.
So
woo!
So super excited.
Yes.
So I'm trying to talk. Maybe we're trying to build a house at the moment, but after that, we're trying to get I'm a big RS6 Avant guy. And
I like that you're a big R. I
like those. I'm also a Cayenne turbo guy. Big Cayenne fan.
Which one's more expensive, you think?
RS6, the new ones are 4.0 performance. They've upped the horsepower a little bit in them, and I believe that they're about 135 to 145.
Okay, because I knew they were over 100. I just couldn't remember where they were.
A turbo is definitely more. If I were to go turbo, I'd probably get a year or two, a model 1 or 2 years used. But yeah, so a Cayenne turbo 1 to 2 years used. You can find them in the 120s. So you can get them pretty similarly priced, but obviously you'll get an RS6 Avant new. I love the RS6 Avants. I think the Cayennes are maybe a tiny bit more practical.
Yes.
Just a tiny bit more room, not much, but a little more room. But I like both of those. So we'll see. We're also building a 91 OBS GMC truck.
Those are my favorite trucks.
Yeah, I love it. So we've got a 2-wheel drive, just regular cab. We're going to do an LS3 swap in, put a nice little QA1 suspension to it. We're gonna change it all to kind of disc brakes versus we have drum brakes and stuff. So that'll be an autocross truck. So once that one gets up and running, we'll do another episode with that one for sure.
I had an '89 as a plow truck.
Oh yeah.
When I was in high school, it was like that I had a little plow business with that I used, and the frame was so rusted through that if you hit a snowbank hard enough, you could feel it bend a little bit. It was awful, but it was it was such a fun little truck, and those are always my favorite.
Yeah, this one right now has it's suspension shot. You hit a little bit of bump, you feel it feel it bottom out, and it's just it's kind of a mess at the moment. So it was my dad's. Dad passed away a couple years ago, and so we're going to kind of make it a fun autocross truck is really what we're going for. Part of your museum delivery on this car is you get to have a plaque. It sits right here. Okay. And this plaque, you get to put something on it. And my dad's motto in life was break the mold. So let's not do what we've always done. Yeah. Let's basically be better versions of ourselves. And so when I made mine, I put break the mold with my dad's initials, kind of as a little shout out to my dad. So
that's great.
But yeah, this has been fun. Thanks for
thank you, man.
Thanks for putting us all together.
You just knew so much about this car, and I mean, obviously you own it, but just to hear you talk about it and learn about you too has been awesome. Thank you so much for
absolutely
finally syncing up.
Won't
with
be the
me.
last time. We'll definitely do this again.
No, we'll do some stuff. Yeah,
and we're gonna get some people. To
definitely
to do this with you, especially some of the fun cars we're getting.
Yeah,
I know. Appreciate it.
Thanks, man.